Faithful, one thing needs to be said loud and clear. The 49ers are not building this roster just to show up. They're building it to carry championship pressure. And that changes everything. Because when a franchise like this starts attacking its weak spots, reclaiming its physical identity, and moving with real urgency, that's not the language of patience, that's the language of ambition. What we're seeing in San Francisco is a team rearranging the chessboard like it knows the margin for error is gone, and the response has to come right now. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me this. Do you feel it too? Do the Niners look like a team building with full-blown Super Bowl mentality? And to me, one of the biggest signs of that mentality is the return of Greenlaw. Because this is not just a feel-good reunion. It's not just nostalgia. And it's definitely not just a low-risk one-year $6 million move. This is identity. This is San Francisco trying to put the soul back into its defense. Greenlaw left, went to Denver, got his chance to be the guy somewhere else, but now the message hits hard. His fit in Santa Clara meant more than a lot of people wanted to admit. Next to Fred Warner, he wasn't just another productive linebacker. He was the guy who brought the violence, the edge, the urgency, the kind of physical discomfort this defense used to inject into every offense it faced. And ever since his injury in the Super Bowl, when he tore his Achilles, that defense has never quite looked the same. And that matters. Because sometimes the most important player isn't the one with the biggest trophy case, it's the one who changes the heartbeat of the unit. Greenlaw may not have been the most decorated name on that defense, but he was one of its emotional thermostats. He was intensity, downhill speed, punishment, pursuit, presence. And when that disappears, the defense feels it. We saw it against the run. We saw it in the loss of physicality. We saw it in that nagging sense that something was missing right in the middle of this unit. That's why I completely agree with the idea that this was one of the most underrated moves of the offseason. Eric Williams from Fox Sports listed Greenlaw's return as one of the best under-the-radar deals out there, and it makes total sense. It's not the kind of move that hijacks the national headlines, but it's the kind of move that can change the behavior of a defense. And for a team trying to get back to true contender status, that kind of move is gold. Now here's the part that matters. I'm not buying this whole "the 49ers window is closing" narrative. I'm just not. Pressure? Absolutely. Expectations? Through the roof. The need to answer? No doubt. But a closing window? That's a different story. If Greenlaw stays relatively healthy, and if the young players on that defense start rising up, San Francisco can get back to being the kind of physically punishing team this fan base knows and loves. Now let me ask you, is Greenlaw's return just a nice story, or is it the first real sign that this defense is ready to get its identity back? Now, if Greenlaw's return is about restoring the defense's soul, the Alex Kappa buzz is about something else entirely: contender survival. Because a team with Super Bowl ambitions cannot go into 2026 pretending the left guard problem is just going to solve itself by wishful thinking. And honestly, that's where this possible move starts getting really interesting. Behind the scenes, the feeling is that the 49ers are not done tweaking this roster. And when you look at the offensive line, it's easy to see why. Quarterback protection is not a side issue. It's not a luxury. It's not something you revisit later. It's a priority. Especially for an offense that needs timing, rhythm, and clean structure for Kyle Shanahan's system to actually breathe the way it's designed to. If the interior protection cracks, the whole blueprint starts to shake. That's why Alex Kappa's name is gaining traction as an emergency fix. Not because it's flashy, it isn't. Not because it would light up the sports shows, it wouldn't. But because he fits exactly the kind of move a contender makes when it identifies a glaring weakness. Experienced, available, proven, and capable of stepping in without needing a 6-month runway. Sometimes the difference between a promising team and a ready-made team is one surgical fix like this. And here's the 49ers angle that stands out most to me. San Francisco is moving like a franchise that understands the size of the moment. This is no longer about development for development's sake. This is not, let's see what happens. If left guard is a real issue, and it sure looks like it is, the team knows it cannot head into the season living on hope. Hope doesn't block. Hope doesn't protect the quarterback. Hope doesn't win in January. If this rumor really gains steam, the impact could be bigger than it looks on the surface. Because we're not just talking about plugging a hole. We're talking about stabilizing one of the most fragile spots on the roster almost overnight. And when a contender stabilizes its interior protection, the ceiling of the whole offense changes. So tell me straight, if you were John Lynch right now, would you bring in a veteran like Alex Kappa and stop gambling with this issue? Because to me, this is exactly the kind of decision that separates a talented team from a team that's truly ready for the title chase. And then we get to the topic that keeps splitting this fan base every single time it shows up on a mock draft: Caleb Lomu. Because yeah, he keeps getting linked to San Francisco, and every time it happens, the logic sounds clean. The offensive line needs help. Trent Williams is going to be 38 in July. The future at tackle has to be addressed. And Lomu is a real first-round talent. All of that is true. But for the 49ers right now, truth by itself is not enough. What matters is fit. What matters is timing. What matters is whether this player answers the urgency this roster is screaming with right now. And that's where I start raising an eyebrow. Because when you talk about tackle in San Francisco, you are not talking about some generic position in some generic scheme. You are talking about a central gear inside a very specific machine. Kyle Shanahan's offense does not survive on pass protection alone. It runs on rhythm, movement, leverage, spacing, and the outside zone engine that powers everything else. The run game here is not a side dish. It is the foundation. It is identity. It is the spark plug for the whole offense. So when a prospect comes in with a strong pass protection reputation, but still has real question marks as a run blocker, that should matter more to the Niners than it would to a lot of other teams. And this isn't nitpicking. His own scouting profile points to development still needed when it comes to finding those lateral landmarks in the run game and maintaining positioning on run fits. In another system, maybe that's manageable. In Santa Clara, that can be the crack in the dam. Because let's be honest, the way this fan base understands it, high upside to develop sounds amazing in April. But contenders under pressure do not live off pretty draft phrases. They live off answers. They live off players who can step in and move the team closer to a title run. That's the heart of the debate. The real question is not whether Caleb Lomu can become a very good tackle one day. The real question is whether he helps enough right now to justify passing on other needs or on other prospects who may be more ready for this exact scheme. And then there's another layer that makes this even more fascinating: the Trent Williams situation. If Trent is still in a contract standoff and the franchise uses a first-round pick on a tackle, what message does that send? Maybe it's just smart planning. Maybe it's long-term vision, but it could also be the kind of move that changes the temperature of an already delicate situation. And let's be real, teams usually don't spend premium first-round capital on a non-quarterback just to let him sit and watch for too long. If Lomu is the pick, expectations would come fast. Maybe faster than people want to admit. That's why every time this name pops up, I don't call it crazy, but I also don't automatically call it perfect. Good prospect? Absolutely. Logical connection to a need? Sure. But logical need and ideal pick are not always the same thing. And for a team that still may need more immediate juice in the defensive front, more instant impact, and more certainty in critical areas, I still think it's fair to ask whether San Francisco could be leaving something better on the board. And in a season where the pressure is all about winning now, that question is not overreaction. That question is responsibility. And then the last storyline ties all of this together in a way that feels even more explosive. The possibility, even if it's still just speculation, of a reunion with Deebo Samuel. And look, I know this one splits the room. Some fans see nostalgia, some see risk, some think it would be a step backward. But when Richard Sherman throws that idea into the air, it deserves at least a real conversation. Because the argument is not ridiculous. Sherman is basically pointing at something every 49ers fan already knows. It was in San Francisco, inside Kyle Shanahan's system, where Deebo hit the peak of his powers. That's where he became a true game breaker, an all-pro, a hybrid weapon, a guy who could tilt the field as a runner, as a receiver, and as a nightmare for defensive structure. And with names like Mike Evans in the fold, the theory would be obvious. Less pressure on Deebo, more room to use him in smarter, more dangerous ways. Now facts are facts. He is not the 2021 version of Deebo anymore. At 30 years old, he's no longer at that physical peak, and his recent production doesn't come close to matching that monster season. So nobody should sell this as some magic fix. That's not what this is. The real question, if that door even exists, would be this. Could Shanahan still squeeze high-level value out of a player who looks far less terrifying outside of this ecosystem? And to me, that's what makes it interesting. Because contenders don't always chase names. Sometimes they chase fit. They chase function. They chase the exact situation that can unlock impact again. I'd still approach it carefully because even Sherman admitted this might just be an idea tossed against the wall. But in the context of a roster trying to come back with real force, even this kind of possibility shows you just how much pressure, urgency, and high-stakes decision-making is surrounding this franchise right now. So now I want to hear from you. Would you welcome a Deebo reunion? Or do you think that chapter is already closed for good? At the end of the day, the message feels crystal clear. The 49ers are moving like a franchise that understands the weight of this moment. Greenlaw's return restores identity. The Alex Kappa conversation screams urgency. Caleb Lomu represents the tension between the future and the present. And even the Deebo rumor reinforces that everything in Santa Clara is being filtered through one lens: contender logic. This is not a maintenance offseason. This is a response offseason. And when the pressure to win a title rises, every adjustment starts to feel like a massive decision. So jump into the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe to the channel. Do you believe the Niners are building the right answer to get back to the Super Bowl?